Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach, mates. Well, round 14 is done and dusted, which means we are almost out of the very, very tricky bye periods. I'm pleased to say that I've got both Thomas and Jonas here tonight, which I think is the first time for about a month or so. We've been out with soreness, general soreness, and illness and whatnot, but we're all three of us are back tonight. So we're just gonna get straight into it. Here we go. So our first topic for tonight is so Dan Houston or Luke Ryan. So Dan Houston, I think he's flying at the minute. 146 on the weekend, and Luke Ryan started the year like a house on fire. Even though Fremantle was struggling, but the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks, his scoring seems to have really dried up. So I'm going to throw this one to you, Thomas. So which way would you lean with these two, and why?
This is obviously a response to the Sicily outcome. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to downgrade his ban or get out of it. So I think he's a trade out option unless you're trying to play for league or whatnot. But I think if that's the case, you probably, if this is obviously with the intention of not having Stewart. If you don't have Stewart, he's probably the way to go because he's finished his bye. I mean, so does Ryan as well. I'm not sure if Port have their bye. I'm pretty sure Port have this bye this week. So this be a Houston look in the week after. But I'd probably look towards. It's a tough one, but I'd almost lean towards Houston. He's doing pretty well down at Port. Consistent at the back line as well, and they're utilising his foot skills as much as they can. We know how good his left foot is. Ryan, as I think you mentioned in a previous podcast, he's kind of been a victim a little bit of the change in Freo's defensive game plan because it went from a chip mark game style, which really benefited him as a kind of a sweeper goalkeeper role to this more direct footy, which is worked in patches for them. And that's impacted his scoring a little bit. He's obviously rebounded pretty well on the weekend and got a 106, which isn't too bad. But yeah, Houston, when he's on fire, he can really punish teams and score huge numbers. And I think at this end of the season, you're probably looking for that ceiling. And Ryan's lost a little bit with his consistency to maintain that high score. And I think Houston might be the way to go. Obviously, if you're looking for a specific trade in this week, probably Ryan at such a cheap price isn't a bad option at 500k. Just because we know that his ceiling isn't that low. His floor isn't that low. But if you're looking for someone post-buy to pick up as a defender, Houston could be your person. It's a little bit unique as well if he hasn't burnt you too many times in the past.
Have you got anything to add, Jonas?
Yeah, I think with Ryan, obviously this week, if you're playing for overall, you're picking Ryan over Houston given the tough bye round, but I would be steering clear of Ryan altogether because, as you can see there, his touches have dried up and his 5-round average is pretty underwhelming. It is, having a look now,
Under 100, I think.
under 100. Yeah, it's under 90. It's 89.8. So I don't think I'd be I wouldn't be confident bringing in a player who's been scoring so poorly. And I think he's had a bit of a role change, which is why he's scoring less. He hasn't been freed up as much, and that's why he's getting less disposals. And hence his ceiling has died. So I'd be going Houston over the two. I think he's a good pod, but obviously you don't need to get Houston in this week. Maybe look at getting a 102k rookie, and then Houston off his bye would be a pretty nice defensive pod.
Yeah, well, I've been in the Dan Houston camp for about the last month and haven't got him. So that's enough said for me. I think Houston is flying at the minute. I think he's symbolic of Port Adelaide at the minute, Houston. So, yeah, I would definitely be leaning towards Houston. But if you started with Luke Ryan, yeah, look, you enjoyed his ride, but I'd almost keep him for this week and then move him on to Houston if you started with him. But if you have traded him in, which I would probably say most people have, you're probably going to have to either just sink with the ship or burn the trade and get rid of him. because I can't see this scoring profile changing for Luke Ryan. Moving on to the next one. So we have got Jack Steele and Patrick Cripps. So I think my two colleagues here have been burnt by Jack Steele this year. I think he's been terribly frustrating this year, and Patrick Cripps sort of wound the clock back a bit to last year with his performance on Sunday. So I'm going to throw this one to you, Jonas, since you and Thomas are both in the Jack Steele camp. So what are you going to do with Jack Steele, Jonas? Are you going to go down with the ship, or are you going to move him on?
Thankfully, I do not own Jack Steele. I've gotten a few picks wrong this year, picking up on, say, a few players and trading out a few players early and bringing in someone like Will Day, for instance. But yeah, if I was in the position of a Jack Steele owner and you have at least 6 trades up your sleeve currently, I'd be trading him out. He just does not look fresh. He doesn't look like he's running out games well. He looks very injured, and it's reflected through his scoring. So I'd be getting rid of him. I don't know if he lasts the rest of the year without having a rest as well. So he's got a high break even again this week. So he's just dropping money, and one player I would be getting out of. If you have Cripps as well, holding him's good, but in terms of a replacement, I wouldn't be looking at grabbing Cripps because he's been pretty ordinary this whole year, actually. I'd be looking to just straight up, proper upgrade him to a 600k midfielder.
Now, Thomas, I believe you are a Jack Steele owner, so what are you doing with him?
Yeah, I mean the same boat as Jones. If you got trades to burn, he's probably worth getting rid of. I know Ross Lyon came out and said that, I think, Jack Steele originally said he had a knee injury of some description. He was going to kind of see it week by week. There's clearly something not right with it. I know Ross Lyon even mentioned an Achilles injury. So no one knows exactly what's going on. It's pretty clear that Ross Lyon's protecting Steele. From what it looks like as a supporter, it definitely seems like that there is some sort of issue going on. And they're not really clear with it, just because I don't think that he's almost a necessity they need in the midfield at the moment. They've got Bytel as cover, and Hunter Clark's probably not too far away. He's probably the one that would come straight in for Steele, and then Steele allows himself a rest. Who knows? I would like to see him play a bit more forward, as much as that hurts Supercoach-wise. Just play him a bit more forward and let Machado Owens or someone run on the ball a little bit and see how that goes, just to change it up. It's clear he's definitely unfit and just not right at all. He's doing himself a disservice to try and play. It's been a very frustrating year for him. He started the year with 2 sub-hundreds. I mean, it was close, but 2 sub-hundreds, and then he came back fitter and later than ever, and he was raring to go. And then obviously his knee just hasn't held up. His shoulder hasn't held up. There's a few issues here and there, so he needs a decent rest. But with regards to Cripps, I think he definitely turned a corner, as did half the Blues side decided to wake up against Gold Coast. And the way they played was a lot more reminiscent of how well they were going last year, but before they missed out on finals. But having said that, I think you're pretty desperate to just do a side swap to Cripps. You're basically clutching at straws there. He did kick 3 goals and he didn't crack a 120, even with his performance there. And I think consistency-wise is lacking with him. However, if you're fine for trades but strapped for cash, you could argue that situation. But I'd say, I'm interested to see what Nathan saw, because I know he went to the game with the Carlton game to see how he went live on the ground, but I don't think it's worthwhile swapping him across. I'd rather, if you are in the position, and I'm not, unfortunately, with the amount of trades I have left, to get rid of Steele, then I'd just go straight up to an Oliver or a Neil or someone just to get rid of him and play on from there.
Yeah, I am so glad that I dodged these two. Jack Steele, I think when you brought him in, Thomas, I had the trade button ready to bring him in, and I'm so glad that I did not do that. Because he is really disappointing people. I think he was 520k, and people were like, he's going to be a steal at that price, but he just hasn't come back. But yeah, I was obviously, even though I'm a Collingwood supporter, I do have a immediate family member that goes for Carlton, so I went to the game and tagged along. And yeah, I have to say the only knock I have on the way Carlton play was I'm not sure if kicking 8 goals 2 from centre clearance is sustainable, given that was the 4th most ever recorded by Champion Data. So I would be very, very wary of jumping on Patrick Cripps and any Carlton player other than Adam Chera outside after that game, because I don't think that score profile is sustainable. Historically, most sides score about 70 to 75% from turnover, and they only score about 20 to 30% from clearance or stoppage. So to get 8 goals from that one source is unheard of, basically. So I'm not sure if I would be getting either of these two, and if I was allowed to, I would dodge both of them. But if I had to pick one, I would be really clutching at straws. But I would say Patrick Cripps, and that's purely because Jack Steele, I think, is a walking hospital, and I wouldn't be surprised if he got rubbed out for a couple of games just with injury and whatnot. But yeah, both of these two, I'm so glad that I dodged them both. Moving on to the next one. So Kieran Briggs. So I heard a stat about Kieran Briggs tonight that I think this is the 5th game in a row where he is rated in the top 3 players on the ground on Champion Data's player ratings, and I think it's only the 3rd time that it's ever happened where someone has done it for 5 games in a row. So he is just flying, Kieran Briggs. And Rowan Marshall, up until this week, his sort of last 4 or 5 weeks, he's been flying as well, but he had a bit of a down week. Thomas, I'm going to throw this one to you since I believe you have both of these guys.
Yes.
What are you doing with Marshall? Are you going to move him on, or are you going to just keep him and maybe even put Briggs at R2? What are you doing?
Yeah, look, I'm in a precarious position as I am with, I believe it was going to be 4 trades if I moved on and got Himmelberg last week, which I didn't end up doing because I already had an abundance of players playing last week. But let's just load this Supercoach up. But I have, I believe, 5 trades left. So I'm in a position where, yeah, it was nice to get Briggs in. He definitely provided cover when Darcy was out. Yeah, I've got 5 trades left and essentially 1 upgrade to make, which would be done. Yeah, look, essentially in one, realistically, if you think about it, if I get rid of Briggs as soon as I can, I think, look, it's a tough one because, you know, it's very nice to see Briggs dominating. He's going to increase more in price. He could hit 500k quite easily at the rate he's going. He's just dominating games. And he's doing himself a really good job as the number 1 ruck. I think he was rated pretty highly up in the ruck department in general. I saw a thing on SEN. But with regards to trading out, I don't think it's worthwhile taking a punt on getting rid of a Marshall I've got Darcy as well. I've got the option to get rid of Darcy as well instead of Briggs, and then, you know, basically complete my team in that sense. It's a tough one though because, yeah, it's one of those situations where as much as it could well, you know, Marshall's getting those 90s and those low hundreds because he's playing as a solo ruck and against tough opposition. And Briggs is just dominating game after game. He does come up against Melbourne after his bye, so he could suffer a poor score there. But I think Briggs was brought in for a reason, which was to make money. And I think if you can utilise that money effectively and just get a premium straight away, I think that might be the way to go. I don't think I'll trade out Marshall, more for sentimental reasons than not logistical. But I think he's just not worthwhile trading him out for the risk of assuming that Briggs is going to continue on a roll. He's got some tough opposition coming up with regards to Ruckcraft. And Flynn's always listed as emergency, so who knows when he gets pulled the trigger. But I think at the moment I'm keeping him as R3. I could understand why you go R2 if you had any other ruckman, But I think you'd probably just keep Marshall. I know I've seen people on Twitter suggest they've traded out Marshall and kept Briggs at R2, but I think I'm just going to keep fat with Marshall. I know what he's capable of when he's on. And then, yeah, I guess we'll come to it when Darcy plays this week and going forward after that. But I think he was brought in for a reason, that was to make money. And maybe it's time to get rid of him just to get to a bona fide premium.
Yeah, what do you share the same sentiment, Jonas?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Briggs has been very, very solid, but he's done his job, and I'd be keeping him for now. I wouldn't be trading out a proven ruckman to bring someone in to R2 who could continue this, but likely we will see some sort of regression. So I wouldn't be wasting trades trying to fiddle around with that. What does seem like a viable option, though, is if you've got already, say, one proven ruckman and Briggs, to just keep him there for now, build your team up, and then just wait until something goes wrong and then just sideways him. But I wouldn't be, if you're in the position of Thomas where he's got, not in the position of Thomas. Yeah, in the position of Thomas because he's got Darcy and Marshall. But like in a position where you've got two solid ruckmans, I wouldn't be forfeiting one to hold on to Briggs, because then you're just fiddling around with trades.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp. I'm keeping Marshall. I've got much bigger issues than getting rid of Marshall. So, yeah, but Briggs has set the house on fire. He's got a bit of a mummy about him. So, yeah, obviously Mumford was a very popular player, not necessarily in Supercoach, but yeah, around the league. So, yeah, I think Briggs is a good one for the future as maybe a new dominant ruckman. But yeah, I think if you don't have him, you've missed the boat. So Sheldrick and Windhager, so two rookies who, I think Sheldrick's on playing his fourth or fifth game, and I think Windhager's probably about the same. Which option do we like here, Jonas, if we're picking one?
If you have to pick between the two, I'd probably go Windhager. Less competition in the midfield, and I think he will outscore Sheldrick from here on. Sheldrick had a very low TOG. I think he was on the ground for like 55% of the game. And whilst he scored great, he did that with 2 goals, and I'm not sure whether or not that continues moving forward with Mills coming in as well. He's going to get even less midfield time. So I think that was more a one-off score, whereas I can see Windhager continuing to score fine because his time on ground and his role will be more favourable.
Yep. How about you, Thomas? Are you same boat?
Yeah, I agree. I was actually quite impressed with Sheldrick. Got bumped out of the midfield a little bit with Parker coming into the side, but he still bobbed up and scored 2 goals. Obviously not going to do that each game, which, yeah, it's a bit of a blight on his score a little bit. But, yeah, Windhager, I think, is the one to go if you want to go down that route for an expensive rookie. Yeah, dominated in the wet, and I think will play permanently midfield from now on. He almost looked like the most impressive mid in the lot that we had to our loss to Richmond in shocking conditions. And I think if Steele goes down for a rest or there's further issues with his knee or whatever, and then even if Hunter Clark comes back in, I think Windhager's a mainstay. You can use as a tagger thing, but I would think it was nice to see him actually play as an on-baller and winning the ball to his own accord. And yeah, demonstrated his scoring, finally got an uptick in his scoring a little bit. So I think he's the one to go for. I'll definitely go for. You're only losing out 10k between the two of them. They're pretty similar in price. I think Sheldrick's 190 and Windhager's just above 200. So I think Windhager's the way to go. He's already decreased in his starting price, and everyone had such high hopes for him. So hopefully with the consistency in midfield minutes now, I think we'll see the best out of Windy in the next couple of weeks. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm not sure on these two. Sort of in the market, I feel like, for a rookie. But I'm not sure about these two. I think I would go Windhager, because I think his spot's probably a bit more secure than Sheldrick. But I was impressed to see that Sheldrick held his spot in the side despite Luke Parker coming back in. All right, so just going to quickly touch on some vice captain options. Thomas, who are you liking?
Look, I'm going to the game Friday night, but I can bet your bottom dollar one of Dunkley and Neale is going to absolutely explode. We don't do very well in centre clearances and haven't been. We've still been essentially injury prone and having not many two great midfielders doing the rest of the carry work. Having said that, I'm pretty confident Windhager tagging probably Neale. I'd say Dunkley's you could tag, but you definitely take Neale out the two. Yeah, I definitely put the VC on Dunkley. If you're not so confident on the Brisbane players for whatever reason, maybe a Stewart as a VC. Captaincy is a pretty slim pickings. You could even go Errol Goulden against West Coast. However, he hasn't set the world on fire ever since a couple of weeks ago. I'd be pretty confident on the G, a Laird, just racking up possessions for fun. I don't think he's going to cop much attention. It'd be interesting to see what you Pies boys think, but definitely out of himself and Dawson, he's been the one that's dominated with slight attentions being put on Dawson and his ability to maintain the midfield, whereas Dawson kind of shifts all over the place a little bit where he's needed. So, yeah, I think I'd be pretty confident going VC Dunkley into Laird because both of them, not surprisingly, but they're just consistent in the way they score, and half of it's due to their tackling pressure. And they bring that week in, week out, regardless if they're tagged or not. And I think both are pretty consistent for a solid score in a bye round that's pretty tough.
Yeah, Jonas, are you the same?
Somewhat similar. I'm locking in Dunkley as the VC, but there haven't been too many good midfielders who have scored really well against Collingwood. So, I mean, you take a look at Petrarca quite recently. He didn't crack 100. And so for that reason, I'll probably avoid Laird, and I don't have too many other options, so I'm going to slap it on Zach Merritt against Fremantle.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet to go decently well. I think Parrish might be coming back as well, so we'll see how that impacts him. But I think it could impact him pretty positively if there's any attention going. But before we wrap it up, we'll leave the floor to Nathan. Haven't given too much pre-warning about what he's going to say. But yeah, we'll see what he's got in store for us this week.
All right, well, I'm leaving it on a black screen. And this is the funeral of the Gold Coast Suns. Because I was at that game on Sunday, as I alluded to, and I tipped the Gold Coast Suns because I have no trust in Carlton, and what they dished up was absolutely appalling. To concede 8 goals from centre clearance, as I said when we were talking about Patrick Cripps, 8 goals from centre clearance, 4th most ever recorded, and they didn't score a single point themselves from centre clearance. That's only happened once before, and it was in 2011 when Geelong won by 186 points against Melbourne. So the Gold Coast Suns, you're now in that rare air where you've basically lost the game out of the centre clearance, and it's just not good enough. You've got Rao, you've got Anderson. I know you're missing Touk Miller, but you had Joe Witts who dominated the hitouts, and you still were unable to do anything to stop the Carlton midfield just running amok. And let's not forget, this is a Carlton side who over the last 5 weeks have been averaging about 60 points, and you let them basically get that in a whole quarter. So I don't know what's going on with the Gold Coast Suns. I know that their record after the bye is horrendous. I think since 2018 or 2017, I think they've won 5 games and lost 35. So the pressure's going to come on Stuart Dew, and it's not going to come because they haven't been playing well. It's going to come because of that second half of the season record, where after the bye, it is just horrific. I don't know what happens to them, but every year this happens, and I don't know if it's a talent issue. I don't know if it's a fitness issue. I don't know if it's players just coming back after the bye and thinking, we've done well in the first half of the season. If we just keep doing what we're doing, we're going to win, which generally doesn't happen in the second half of the year, because sides start jostling for positions around the 8, and they just seem to crumble under any sort of pressure that comes their way. So they've got a tricky matchup this week against Hawthorn, this week. Yeah, it is this week, which on paper looks like you would say would be a Gold Coast Suns win. But the way Hawthorn have been playing, especially from that source of centre clearance, I'm not so sure about that game now for Gold Coast. And then they play Collingwood, who are obviously flying. So, if they lose those two, they're in trouble again. And I think this will put more pressure on Stuart Dew than he's ever come under. And it's purely because of the second half of the season where they just don't perform at all. So to the Gold Coast Suns in particular, Nut Centre Clearance Group, your aim this week should be to figure out how you can take advantage of Jarrett Witz's ruck dominance and get the game going forward to your end, because as soon as you got the ball, it was basically just bomb it in long and hope that Ben King could just take a mark with 3 players hanging off him, and that was it. Like, no one showed any leadership. And to give up 9 goals in a quarter is just not good enough. So, to the Gold Coast Suns, I don't want you to have this black screen again here, because if you have this black screen here again, you're probably going to lose Stuart Dew, and you're going to be back to square one again where you've got players who are looking to leave. Because when you started this year, I think most people thought you would be playing finals. So to lose that way was just horrific. And the other guy I'm going to take a pot at, I'm just getting up my side real quick, is Jackson McRae. Now, Jack, I traded you in a couple of weeks ago when you got your forward eligibility, and your last few weeks have been really good, but only to get an 81 is not good enough for this time of the year, and especially against North Melbourne, when at least from what I saw, it looked like you didn't have much of the time at centre clearances, so that might explain it a bit. But it hadn't been an issue for you previously, so just need a little bit of a lift from you, Jack. You've been good since I've had you, but let's not make this a habit. Otherwise, you're going to be on the outer, and I don't know what's going to happen with you, because I do have an overflow of forwards. So if you keep doing that, you might be on the chopping block. And that is my rant for this week.
I think Gold Coast be very careful where they tread 440 on a Sunday night this week on a graveyard shift against Hawthorn. If the way they dished up against Carlton, it could well be that Will Day is a field day, and it'd be nice for the owners of the Hawthorn club. But yeah, I think for Nathan's sake, before he has a heart attack, I think Gold Coast better show some heart a little bit up there in the Sunshine State.
Do something.
Yeah, before he loses again. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. Good luck for the final round of the buys. I know it's been a tricky predicament to get through, essentially 4 weeks. I know one of them was pretty redundant with only 2 teams out, but still a pretty rough 4-week patch for a lot of people, especially with suspensions and injuries and whatnot that throw a lot of the buy planning completely out the window. We've got one more to go and then back to normality, and hopefully for a lot of you by the round 15 mark, if you're close or if not already to a full side, and can enjoy the run home without having to worry about weekly trades and enjoying the run home with a full side, or if not, you're pretty close to. So other than that, good luck for the final week of buys, and we'll catch you next week.